Hello everyone, my name is Facundo and today we will talk about content management systems, Headless CMS and how to get advantage of this kind of products in our React applications. First of all, I will introduce myself. My name is Facundo Giuliani. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm a full stack developer and systems engineer, and I'm working as a developer relations engineer at Storyblok. Storyblok is a headless CMS, and well, I will introduce the product later. I'm also a Prisma ambassador. Prisma is an ORM that we can use to manage databases in our applications. I'm an Auth0 ambassador. Auth0 is a platform to add authentication and authorization to our applications. And I'm a Cloudinary media developer expert. Cloudinary is a platform that we can use to manage video and images in our applications. The talk is not related to these three products. If you want to talk about them, if you want to talk about Storyblok or about anything, you can reach me at my Twitter account, which my handle is Facundo Zurdo, or you can write me a message through my website, which is fgiuliani.com. First of all, I wanted to introduce the concept of content management system, which is an application used to create and manage digital content. You may be familiar with the term because there are well-known content management systems like WordPress, Drupal, or Joomla that are used in a lot of websites that are still alive in the web. Almost the 80% of the websites available in the web are done or were created at the beginning using products like WordPress. And these applications, what allow us is to create content, generate content through an admin interface. So we can have people that is probably not fully related to the technology or with the programming or development, and create the content. And with the integration that this platform offers, we can store the information in a database and display the content created in web pages or websites using a view layer or a presentation layer. This kind of systems is super helpful and useful for different web projects that we can create and manage in small or big organizations where the people that is creating and generating the content is different than the one that is developing the website. But there's one problem with this type of traditional CMS, let's call it in that way. The problem is that we are forced to use a certain presentation layer that is tied to the product itself. So for instance, WordPress forces us to use PHP to create our websites and web applications. And we have to follow a lot of rules that the application or the platform set to work with it and with the content that is created. And here's where the concept of Headless CMS appears. A headless CMS is a content management system where the content repository is separated or decoupled from the presentation layer. So in this case, the CMS will be only the admin interface that we will use to create and manage the content, and an API that we can call from a variety of front-end layers or different presentations that we can use for our projects. For instance, a website or a web application, a mobile application, let's say, or probably an application that we want to create for a smart device like a, I don't know, smartwatch or something like Amazon's Alexa product. And we can deliver content to those platforms. But what is cool here is that if we want to create a website, for instance, we can use the front end and the presentation layer that we want. I mean, as we have an API available to interact with, we can use, I don't know, frameworks like React, for instance, or Vue or Angular, or use other type of programming languages like ASP.NET, PHP, Python, or etc. So we can see or we can identify some differences between the monolithic or the traditional CMSs and the headless CMSs. We have the front end and the back end decoupled, so the admin layer that we have to create the content is not necessary forcing us to use any kind of presentation rules or layer. And that's why we have flexibility to display the content that we create and generate in the platform as we want and manage and order it as we want, not forcing the presentation layer to use a certain format of displaying the information. Doing this, what we are getting is both the developer experience and the user experience are as the best as we can. I mean, the users will be using an admin layer, a platform or an application to create the content that will be easier for them to manage and to generate or create the content that they want for the projects. But on the other hand, the developers will be working with the technologies that they are familiar with or the technologies that best fit or depending on the project that they are working. And as we said before, we will be able to create projects and applications, omni-channel applications, let's say, because we can deliver the same content that is created once in the admin panel of the CMS and distribute it to different channels like mobile applications or websites, for instance. In this headless CMS category, I want to focus on Storyblok. Storyblok is a headless CMS that it has two main features, let's say. It has a variety of them and a lot of details that we can discuss in another opportunity, but I want to focus on two of the features or details that Storyblok offers to the developers to create great experiences both for the developers and for the users. Storyblok offers a real-time visual editor that the content creators can use to see how the website will look like with the content that they are generated at that moment. And on the other hand, probably to make the developers' life easier, it has a component approach. I mean, the content generated inside the application or the admin panel of a Storyblok can be ordered as components, nestable components that we can manage and handle in the presentation layer of our project. As this conference is about React, we can link the concept of the component with React itself. I mean, inside Storyblok, we can create components that are called blocks, for example, for the different parts of a certain page. So we can have a component for the header, another for the hero, we can have another component for the footer. Storyblok drives the content following the theory of the atom design. So we can have components that they have components inside of them. And also, Storyblok gives the possibility to link the admin panel to your application. I mean, the application that you are creating, the presentation layer that you are creating, to allow the content editors to see how the content that they are creating is going to look like. And to display this and to show this, probably it's better to show you a quick demo that I created using React and Storyblok as the backend of an application. And we can see these main features of Storyblok. So in this case, I have an application that I created and it's running locally because it's localhost 3000. And it's a blog site. I mean, this is an example. We have the blog with the header image. We have different components on our page. This is the home page. And we have blog posts here that we can click and we can go to the blog post details, the text of the blog posts, and etc. And we have an about page that we can also see here. And you can see that this application is running locally, but it's connecting to a Storyblok space. and I will show you the code of the application, or probably the main parts of the application, so you can get an idea of how it works. So this is a React project. I want to focus on a couple of NPM packages that I'm using and enable us to link with Storyblok and get the best of it, of the experience. One of the packages is Storyblok Editable, that we will see later how it connects with the components that we have in our pages, or we call it stories. And another package is Storyblok JS Client, which will allow us to see the real-time preview in the visual editor. So we have here the main application, our main React application, and we see here that we are using a hook. Use Storyblok is called. We are getting the slug or the path of the page that we are visiting now. This will be like a generic page that we will load. And getting the path of the page, we will send that slug or that path to this hook, use Storyblok. And, well, here I'm hard coding a preview as true property, because we are going to work like this is not the published version of our web application. This is like the draft version or the testing version, let's say. And, well, we will call this hook to get the story related to the page that we are visiting. Now we will see in Storyblok application how this is managed and well, organized. And if we have information for the page or for the path that we are visiting, we will display a generic layout that we have for all the pages, and we have a dynamic component that we will see later how it works. But this dynamic component will load all the blocks that are inside the page that we are visiting, no matter which type of block is. So we have, as we saw before, we were including this use Storyblok hook. First of all, we are instantiating this Storyblok client, which is the one that I mentioned before. This Storyblok client will offer us a connection to the API to bring content from the Headless CMS that we can use in our application. So we are instantiating this Storyblok client that we will use later, and we have here the use Storyblok hook that we created. We are using a state because we will handle information related to story. We init some event listeners that we will use in the page. For instance, this Storyblok bridge. The Storyblok bridge is the one that links our application with the control panel or the application of Storyblok, where the content editors will create the content and will allow us to display this real-time preview. And we will say that whenever a user changes or publishes a story or any component in the control panel, we will reload our page to display the changes. And we will change the story that we are storing in the state of our page whenever it happens an input event. I mean the user press a key, for instance. And if we enter in edit mode, which is displaying the page inside Storyblok application, we will use the Storyblok client to bring all the information related to the story that we are visiting. In this case is the draft version, as I said before. And we will set that story in our page. For this to work, we are adding a bridge to all the pages that we visit. This is a JavaScript script that we have to include in our pages, and is the Storyblok bridge. I mean, in this case, you will include this script only in the preview mode or in the testing environment or development environment. You won't include this in production because you don't want to do that. You don't need a real time preview for production. And well, those are probably the main parts of this hook that I wanted to show you. How we load information related to the story that we are visiting and the events that will affect to the story that we are seeing whenever we change something or publish the content, or whenever the content is changed. So let's go to the Storyblok application, which is the URL is app.storyblok.com. Here I'm logged in because I already have an account and I already created this space with components. We will see that we have this control panel. I will go to the content menu here, and you will see that I have stories already created here. Stories will be like pages in a website or a web project, not necessary pages because as we said, we can create omni-channel experience and we don't have pages in, for instance, a mobile application. But probably that's the most familiar term that we can use to link the concept of story. And if I click, for instance, on the home story, you will see that I have here defined a preview URL, which is pointing to my local application. And we are loading here the story that we are editing inside Storyblok application and using the representation with the view layer that we created in our React application locally. So you can see that this is the same application that we saw before here in this tab, that we are loading exactly the same, but now we have the possibility to edit the content of our page and see how the changes will look like without having to save changes in our stories or even publish to a certain, I don't know, production version of our application or testing environment or staging environment. We will see the changes live without having to deploy anything. So as we saw before in the code, if I click, for instance, here, this is a component of type teaser. I will show you later how the components are rendered in the application. But you can go here to this component, you can see the text here, and we can edit the text live, and you will see that affecting the application that we created. I mean, this is the localhost 3000, so this is our local application running, and the content being linked from Storyblok application and being displayed using our local application. So you can edit the content of the page, you can change this text, you can go here, you can change the title of this section of the page, related post testing, let's say, or we can go to the page itself and we have different blocks or components, and we can add new ones. Like I can go here and add blocks. These are the different types of blocks that I have available in my space because these were defined by the administrator of the space or probably the developers. You can define as many blocks as you need or you want. You can set the different fields that you want to have for each type of component. For instance, this text component will have only one field, which is the text itself. So we can see that I can enter this text. We can add other components like, I don't know, a teaser, which will have also a headline and an image that I can upload. This is the headline of the teaser. You can see that the blocks that I'm adding have different styling or different CSS defined, and that's defined in the React application that I created and I did as I needed or as I wanted. We can change the order of the components here, so I can rearrange here and move this here, here. You can see that I'm changing this and seeing in real time the changes that I'm applying, and I didn't click this button that we have in the top right corner that says save. I mean, if I click here on save, what we are doing is editing the draft version of my story. That probably we can say, I don't know, the testing environment or the staging environment will consume the draft version of our story. We can even publish it and see it in production, the story that I just created. And doing this, what we can do is giving the possibility to the content editors to create content like blog posts or different pages for a website without having to do a deploy or requesting changes or requesting certain steps of a workflow to the developers. I mean, the code of our application is not changing at all, and we are publishing new content that could be, I don't know, calling a webhook or using a webhook to trigger a deploy that generates a static page that will display the new blog post that I just created. And this is all enabled in this visual editor that Storyblok offers to the users. As I said before, we will have a dynamic component that we are using in our application. This dynamic component has a list of components that we allow and we support in our application. And we link a type of components that we define inside Storyblok with a component that we have in our React application in this case. And we have the dynamic component that, depending on the component that is coming from the Storyblok API, we will render that certain type of component. So for instance, I don't know, you saw that in my page, here we have the page which has a collection of blocks which are dynamic component because we are able to add any type of component in our page. And for instance, I added a teaser. The teaser has the styling that we define here with different classes. We have the headline that I inserted in Storyblok application. We have an image that we can upload. I also created a text component with the text property that we can set. We can define the markup that we need for each one of the components that we will support both in Storyblok Visual Editor and in our application. And you see here that I'm using the SB editable from the other NPM package, which is called Storyblok editable that I mentioned before. And what we do is create a component, and I mean an HTML element, and we set the SB editable here with the block information that is coming from the dynamic component class or object, let's say. And you can see then that I can insert any type of component and our page will render it without any kind of limitation or any kind of problem or issue. So this was a quick example. If you want to learn more about Storyblok or Headless CMS, these are some useful links. You have an explanation of what the Headless CMS is. You have more information related to the visual editor, the repository of the Storyblok editable package that I used, or there's a developers page, the developers hub in Storyblok page with a lot of information and tutorials related to different technologies, frameworks, and programming languages that you can use to create your applications linking to a Headless CMS like Storyblok. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this talk. And well, you can contact me on Twitter or my website if you have any questions. And again, thank you for this opportunity. Bye.
I think it's quite impressive how interactive you can make it for developers. I mean, the way we do React Finland website or our things, it's quite, let's say it's different. So we push, we have GraphQL API on top of GitHub. But and we use the GitHub as editor, so we don't have anything this visual. But so where do you think Storyblok itself is going? What do you have in mind for its future?
Well, Storyblok team is working now on a version 2 of the product to improve the user interface and the experience of creating the content. And well, now it's in a beta program that anyone is invited to join. If you go to storyblok.com/b2, you can join the beta program and start playing with this beta version. The idea is to improve the user experience, to create the content and the interface to work on that in the application in the visual editor. probably to generate more interaction between the users that are creating the content itself. Again, not forgetting that there are users, there is people that is using the application to create the content, and focus on the content editors, the content creators, the designers that have to create great experiences for the users, for the final users, and trying to make the best as possible to offer a great experience for them.
Right. So it's still a little silent on YouTube side, but does anyone else have any thoughts on the presentation, or this? I guess it's more about this headless approach that's giving you a lot of power. Nishi or Matteo?
Okay.
Yep.
So, well, the presentation by Facundo, I think it was great, and I think that you have quite a different approach to visual editing. I see that we are aiming both at providing a visual editing experience for content editors, and I think that we take different approach both at a developer level and at a user interface level, because for developers you have this concept of a JavaScript bridge, while you will see that in our case React Bricks really just work with React. We chose React as a core feature for our development. So you will see that in a way it's more integrated already with React without having any external script, but because of course we are limited in a way to that sort of platform. And for the visual editing, we take a different approach, because we have direct visual editing like you see in pages or Word document. So you write directly over the content. And so, but I think that we have similar ideas implemented in different ways.
Yeah. I think you have sort of some kind of basic. If you look from certain direction, you have the basic blocks that you have some kind of API for the developer, that for different for the mobile app and website and whatever you might have. But then how you do these editors, there are like so many ways how you can do it.